Welcome to Dumb Guys. This is the 2017 Fantasy Football Early Sleepers.
Dumb Guys.
It is. This is very early for football. We're still have our primary focus on baseball right now, trying to win our leagues. But it's time to start thinking about football, preparing. I mean, the draft just happened this week. So start looking at what you're going to do. Get a step ahead of all your competition right now.
Absolutely. So I think we picked out 5 guys each. We're going to talk about here. These are guys that are going to perform better than their ranking according to our opinion. So Heath, why don't you get us kicked off?
Yes, and so my method here is not to go super deep sleepers, but just outside the top 10 of their position, and I think they'll perform like a top 10. And my number 1 is Marcus Mariota, QB. His team just took a wide receiver with the 5th pick overall. That may not have been the best pick. They've been criticized for reaching there, but I think it will help him out. And he's at a stage where he's very young, just had like his first full season. And so I think he's at a stage right now to where he can really excel next year and take a step into being a top 10 quarterback. And he's got a good collection of receivers around him, including Delaney Walker and the guy that he just picked. So I think it's a guy to keep an eye on if you miss out on one of the top quarterbacks.
Right. That's the thing about football, too, is that, first of all, guys come right out of college and they're ready. They're basically NFL ready, which is a lot different than like baseball, where they play in the minors for 5 years and then they come up. And then it takes them several years to get into it, unless they're a superstar like Mike Trout.
Yeah, it takes a while to learn the baseball career arc.
Yeah,
and when they're ready to go. But this QB does take a couple years at least.
Right, you got to learn the playbook, and you got to learn to control your line and all of that.
Yeah, and be a team leader and all that. And I think Mariota probably has just enough experience to really start excelling.
Yeah, and another thing I think with football, which is probably a little bit different than baseball or other sports, is that one guy can make the difference. So bringing on that wide receiver could be all the difference for how he does on the field.
Yeah, I think he'll have a good total package of wide receivers for a young, good quarterback to excel there.
Yeah. Well, I went a little bit different than you did. I went really deep on my sleepers here. And the first guy I got, he's a quarterback, Carson Wentz. He's ranked at 130 in the Yahoo leagues. And what I see with this guy is last year he had some pretty terrible receivers. I think it was one of the worst in the league. And this year, I think he's got some better receivers around him, so he's going to have a better opportunity. He threw for 3,700 yards. That's not too bad, right? But only 16 touchdowns. So I expect that number will probably go up this year with the better receivers.
I had him on my team actually last year. Just to clarify, our league allows 2 quarterbacks, which is not that common. A lot of leagues allow 1 quarterback. You're not looking as deep as we're looking. But Wentz, I think, is a similar story to Mariota, to where he's ready to excel. I actually had his tight end as well, Ertz. And I think that Philadelphia offense will be pretty action-packed, and they'll be looking to be a gunning team next year.
Yeah, and one more thing. He had laser eye surgery. So now he can see.
Oh, yeah, that helps, to get that, to be able to see a receiver when you throw that ball down the field.
Especially when they're way down there and they're like, tiny.
Yes.
He's like, he can hit them now.
All right, so my next pick is a running back, and it's Jeremy Hill on the Bengals. This is another guy I had on my team last year. And kind of just depends on your draft strategy here. I like to get out of sync with the league a lot of times. Say, like, if I think the league is going to be picking wide receivers a certain round, or running backs a certain round, or quarterbacks a certain round, I like to kind of get out of sync and be picking something different. And so, like, if your league's taking all running backs in the beginning, I like to find a running back I think I can rely on later and take a top, like, receiver or quarterback in those top 2 rounds.
Yeah.
And so I think Jeremy Hill is one of those guys that can very favorably compare to a lot of other teams' second running back, but he'll go later than that.
Yeah.
He's playing for a contract this year. His rookie contract is ending. He's still very young, but I think he's going to push 1,000 yards, have a decent amount of touchdowns, and he'll be that value that a lot of guys are spending, like, on a second-round pick much later.
Yeah. That's an interesting strategy, too, and I use that strategy once in a while as well. It's like you look at the position that is going to be, maybe it's not the most valuable position, but it's one where you're going to get ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
And that's, a good one to target them because you're going to have a leg up on the next guy.
Yeah, and if you're playing a PPR league, I mean, you might want to get into those receivers, get that top receiver, and have a running back you can fall back on later like this.
Well, and that's the thing, too. I was just going to say that. It's like, depending on the type of league you're playing, you mentioned the quarterback and the fact that we have quarterbacks are available in one of our flex spots. But a PPR league changes your strategy a little bit, too. Receivers are a little bit more valuable. Running backs who do a lot of receiving are more valuable. So those are things you got to look at as well. Okay, going back to my list here, another quarterback ranked really, really down there at 132 is Blake Bortles. But I heard that this guy, he didn't get you the points, right? And I think the Jaguars just selected a running back in the draft, right, to solidify him as the quarterback. There was actually talk that the Jaguars were going to boot him out. They were going to go find another quarterback. But this pretty much solidifies him as their quarterback this year. And so I think he's coming off a really bad year last year. But the year before, I think he had a pretty decent year. Where's my numbers here? I can't remember. Well, I don't know. But I think he had a pretty good year. And I also think that last year he was struggling with shoulder injury. So,
yeah, I mean, that's a really deep pick, and it's tough to rely on a Jaguars quarterback. But who knows? I mean, that's the thing. And I have more to talk about the quarterback class in my last pick this year. So I think I'll revisit this at the end.
Yeah.
But I'll jump into mine. And I know this is a high guy to talk about in a sleepers video, but I've got Lamar Miller here with the Texans. Some people might be projecting him to even go in the second round of your draft. But that's in drafts where people are taking the top wide receivers in the first round, then guys like Lamar Miller in the second round. I think this guy's good enough to, like I talked about, get out of sync, pick somebody else in the first round, and have Lamar Miller be your first running back you take in the second round, if that strategy makes sense in your league. Because I think that awful quarterback, Brock Osweiler, really held him back. His receiving was way down from the years before. He typically received about 300 yards a season, was down to like 180 yards receiving. And I think he can push 1,000 yards rushing, 400 yards receiving with a better quarterback, and they just drafted Deshaun Walker with the 12th pick overall. And I think Deshaun Walker's got enough athleticism to kind of distract defenses from Lamar Miller more so than Osweiler did, to where defenses could just focus on Lamar Miller. It's another guy that I had on my league team last year. I think most all these first picks are guys that I had last year. But I think Lamar Miller will improve. He rushed for 1,000 yards last year, but I think you're going to see an uptick in touchdowns and an uptick in receiving.
So basically, you got attached to your team last year. Now you're telling everybody to go pick.
Yeah, well, I was the champion last year.
Oh well, I guess that means something, right?
Yeah, and I had my top players were receivers, and so almost everyone else was kind of.
And last year we did a PPR league.
Yeah, we did PPR. Yeah.
So we did a PPR league, and we had a quarterback available in our flex spot.
Yes, so it was a little different, but I think Lamar Miller is that guy. Like I said, you can get out of sync, take the top receiver or something like that in the first round, take a guy like this in the second.
So with Lamar Miller, I think I looked, and I think he was probably projected to go like 19 or 21 or something like that rank. So what you're saying is take him over some of the other maybe guys that are going in the second round.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is, say like a lot of people will be shooting to take like a David Johnson or Bell or somebody like that, one of those top receivers in the first round, and then Lamar Miller is their second running back.
Right.
So as their top two picks.
Yeah.
I'm saying I think Lamar Miller could be good enough to where, and then you target a guy like a Jeremy Hill later to be your second running back. And then you take like a top receiver like a Brown in the first round to get out of sequence, especially like in a PPR league.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I've got a running back on my next pick here, and again, I went deep. You went earlier than I did, I think, and that's Frank Gore.
Oh.
And what I noticed about Frank Gore is that, first of all, he's ranked number 98, so he's way down there. He's in the 20s for running back ranks, but I think he's a guy that could rush over 1,000 yards. Expect about 10 touchdowns from him, and I think he's got a better receiving game than has been represented in previous years. And ever since he moved over to the Colts, his receiving game has increased. He's getting more targets and more catches. So in a PPR league, that can definitely stand him out above some other running backs.
So yeah, running backs ranked in 20.
Yeah.
And Frank Gore's like a classic. I've got a 49ers jersey here.
Course. Yeah.
And he's one of those guys that they've been expecting to fall off for years and just hasn't done it. Still keeps being reliable.
Yeah.
So we'll see if he can do it for one more year.
I know he's old, so he's going to be off a lot of people's radars. And again, because I don't think he had the best year last year, he's not going to be on people's radar, so you might be able to swoop in and grab this guy. So it's not like I'm telling you to take him really early. I'm just saying keep your eye on him because he could be, a diamond in the rough there at the end of your draft.
Yeah. All right. So I guess I'll move on to my next pick. I've got another Texans guy here, and it's DeAndre Hopkins. And you might be able to tell I'm kind of high on the Texans' offense improving by getting Osweiler out of there and drafting a new quarterback. They've already got a top-notch defense, maybe the best defense in the NFL. But I think this receiver is as talented as, Odell Beckham or Brown.
Wow.
Those types of guys. He just doesn't have that quarterback to throw to him. And so even just a little uptick to a rookie quarterback like Deshaun Walker, I think will be enough to get this guy into like the top 10 of receivers. I think ESPN right now has him ranked 14th as receiver, but he's definitely just as talented as the top 5. So,
and the crazy thing is, though, because we were just talking about this, is a guy ranked 14 as a receiver is a guy that's still going pretty early in the rounds, right? Because receivers, are a premium.
They are,
especially
premium in our PPR league.
Yeah.
But I think this guy, if you feel like you're going to miss out on those top 5, take this guy and maybe he will make up for that. And so this is kind of a fallback to my other strategy of taking a wide receiver first and then a running back like Lamar Miller later. If you're going to take like the David Johnson in the first round, maybe you fall back on DeAndre Hopkins at wide receiver. And so you can see you've got to have these guys to fall back on depending on who you get in the first round.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
depending on how you're balancing your team out.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I think it's good to have guys like this on your mind. If say you get an opportunity to take like a top-notch guy like a David Johnson in the first round.
Yeah.
As a running back.
Yeah. All right, moving on to my next guy here. So I'm switching over to a wide receiver, and as you're going to notice here, as I continue down my list, I'm moving up the draft, and this guy's ranked number 72, and that's Golden Tate. And this is another guy who switched teams, and since he switched teams, you see his targets are going up now that he's with Detroit. He was 10th overall last year in receptions in a PPR league. That's big, and I expect this guy to have more touchdowns. In 2017, I think he only caught 4 touchdowns last year, so I would expect that to go up a little bit.
Yeah, and Detroit with Matthew Stafford has shown that they're good at featuring a single wide receiver and having him have good stats. What we saw over the years with Calvin Johnson.
Right. Yeah.
So we'll see if Golden Tate can step up. He probably won't ever be Calvin Johnson.
No.
But as a ranked 72 guy, he might be a good value.
Exactly. And you mentioned Stafford. I think Stafford is a better quarterback than he's represented over the past few years. I think he's got a lot more potential. I mean, didn't he throw for over 4,000 yards and have like 40 touchdowns one year?
Yeah. I won a championship with him as my primary quarterback in the past.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys, I think people have been frustrated with him because he's been up and down.
Absolutely.
And so when you pick a guy like a Stafford expecting to get 4,000 yards and a lot of touchdowns, and then he has a down year, a lot of guys just don't want him the next year.
Yeah.
And so you just got to realize, though, that he's still got that potential, and he's falling a little bit later.
Well, he's got that potential, but that means that's going to transfer over to his receivers as well. And that was my point there.
All right. So here's my last pick, and don't laugh, but I put Mitch Trubisky. No, I'm kidding. I think Trubisky's going to be a bust. Don't draft him. But what I put here is Jared Goff, and this is kind of an example pick. What's happening in the NFL right now is a lot of the top quarterbacks that you relied on for years and years and years are getting old.
Yeah.
And they're going to either fall off, start getting hurt. Tom Brady, I believe he's around 37. Breeze is getting up there. Ben Roethlisberger, they're all getting up to the extent to where you're starting to hear, like, is this their last year? Are they going to retire? And they're getting to that age to where they might start missing time with injury and things like that. So you got to get familiar with these young quarterbacks like Jared Goff, like Carson Wentz that Barry mentioned earlier, because they're going to start taking over. And if you pick a Breeze and he gets hurt, you need to be familiar with these guys to fill their spot.
You need a backup.
Yeah.
You need someone to fall back to. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think Tom Brady's going to be a risk for age. Breeze and Roethlisberger, like I said, but everyone is getting older in that quarterback class. And kind of those rushing quarterbacks were kind of like a flash in the pan type thing.
Yeah.
And so like the generation after those primary ones kind of fizzled out. I think Cam Newton's the only one that kind of stood out of those rushing quarterbacks. The rest kind of had real quick careers are over pretty quick.
Yeah.
So get familiar with these young quarterbacks coming up. I don't think there's going to be a draftable quarterback in this draft class. And so the couple guys that are taken last year at the top, I believe Goff and Wentz were the top 2 picks in the draft the year before. So get familiar with these guys, start watching them, have them as a fallback this year, and maybe next year they become like your primaries.
Next year they're your starting quarterback.
Yeah. So what I'd say is get familiar with this young class.
Yeah, and it's a little bit different in our league. If you've got a quarterback in a flex spot, the quarterback pool shrinks. Because you've got 10 or 12 teams that are swooping up all those quarterbacks, those starting quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So I mean, how many starting quarterbacks are there? 30.
Yeah, around that. So yeah, and so in a league where you can take 2, that's totally different.
Yeah.
But like a guy like a Goff, just keep an eye on him. You just never know when one of these guys is going to break out and be huge.
Yeah.
Especially when they're top. I believe Goff was first and Wentz was second in the draft. So just be ready for that. These teams picked him that high for a reason.
And that's how you win your league, too. You win your league by keeping an eye on guys who are off everybody else's radar. That's why sleepers is such a big key word.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to know who's going to win their league that nobody else knows about.
Yeah, I mean, everybody knows who to get in the top 2 rounds.
Exactly.
You need to get that top player later in the draft to have that deep team.
Exactly.
That stands out above the rest.
Right. Okay, well, the last guy on my list, and again, I'm moving down the ranks here. This guy's at number 60. He's a wide receiver. That's Brandon Marshall. This is a guy who was like a top 2, pick a couple years ago. But he's getting old, and so obviously you're not going to count on him to be your number 1 wide receiver. But again, we're talking about game changers here, things that are happening that are going to switch things up. He's moving over to the Giants from the Jets. He's now going to have a quarterback with some skill in Eli Manning. Now, obviously, he's not going to be the number 1 wide receiver there because they got Beckham. But this is a guy who scored 14 touchdowns 2 years ago. He's still going to get some targets. He's going to balance out that receiver core there. And I think he's definitely going to do better than the 788 yards and 3 touchdowns he did last year. So this guy could be a value wide receiver pick for you in the middle of the draft.
Yeah, especially like some leagues have 3 receivers, so you got to pick a lot of them.
Yeah.
Or
you got the flex
spots, all that. Yeah. So it's a good guy to keep an eye on and maybe have on your bench to start the year and fill in. And who knows how he'll do.
Well, we know he's got talent.
Yeah, I believe Victor Cruz is leaving the Giants, and so he's probably going to step in and be the secondary guy to Odell Beckham.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Right.
All right. So
well, that's early sleepers.
Yeah, just some guys to get the conversation going. I think once the draft is done, once more definitive ranking list comes out, we'll have more in-depth videos, but this is just one to get that conversation started on football and to mix in with all the baseball videos we're still doing.
Yeah.
Here, so get in there and start looking at the Yahoo rankings. I mainly went off ESPN rankings and Matthew Berry rankings, but yeah, get into those Yahoo rankings, start doing mock drafts, and be well ahead of everyone else. I mean, the draft's over, so you can see how the draft is going to affect teams now. So get out there and get smarter than everybody else from information from dumb guys.
Yeah, information from dumb guys to go get smart.
Yes.
I already did a mock draft.
Nice.
Yeah, I did a mock draft. I think the first day they were available, I just went in there and I said, I'm going to do one. I didn't stay very long. I think I did the first pick and I was like, all right, I got to run. So the computer picked it for me. I got a really high score on it too.
Nice. Yeah. Well, even auto drafts could get you a little information of just where guys are falling.
Yeah, just where they're falling, who's going where. What the rankings are, it was a learning process for me to kind of get familiar with what's going on this year.
All right,
great. All right, well, hey, thanks for watching. Stick with the dumb guys so you can win your fantasy league. Like this episode.
Yeah, subscribe to us and tell us about like guys that you think are sleepers.
Yeah.
And tell us where you think we're wrong on our picks.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I am a top-notch fantasy player, but I need your help too. So let us know.
All right, here we go.
Yep. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.